So, the part 4, here is our advice to the MAGA movement and the plan to scramble the Europe. MAGA should realize that Trump's first term was dragged down by the deep state, preventing him from deploying policies that truly benefit the middle class in USA. MAGA must split itself with globalists whose only reason for supporting Trump is to benefit from tax cuts and government contracts, like the defense and infrastructure contracts. In order for the MAGA movement to succeed, the policy continuity is the key. MAGA should empower jdvance to carry the Trump's torch and unite with the populists among the Democrats, people like Senator Sanders, reviving the FDR spirit in terms of public and political agendas. It also must abandon the obsession with the 20th century unions, which now hinders worker skills, hinders the development and the business competitiveness of the American industries. Instead, it should reform the land policy to enable the infrastructure growth. This would leverage high-speed rail and low-altitude economies, flying drones, flying cars, to bolster the American manufacturing. The US should also overhaul its education system, purging the Ivy League DEI focus, promoting the STEM and the STEM at primary and middle schools to train the new engineers for generations to come. And here is our ultimate solution, which is a scramble for Europe. This is our most brilliant part of this video. We offer our ultimate solution, a grand solution that benefits USA, China, and Russia all together, at the cost of globalist evil factions. Together, let's dismantle the EU, a self-entitled globalist stronghold draining our blood and nurturing themselves without even saying thank you to all of us. And why should we do this? Why this is actually a morally righteous thing to do? Today, the European prosperity relies on 3 things, and none of these 3 actually come from Europeans. First is the free US security protection. Second is an easy Chinese market access. And third is the cheap Russian energy export, enabling Europeans to spend half of the world's welfare expense on only 10% of the global population. However, the EU has not been grateful to any of these 3 great powers. It blocks the US control of Canada and Greenland. It undermines Russo-Ukrainian peace talks led by Putin and Trump administration. It persecutes Russian-speaking people in the Baltics. And it even meddles in China's internal affairs in Taiwan and Hong Kong. Who gave them such rights? Having said that, now comes the division plan, the grand division of Europe by USA, China, and Russia. The USA will take over Western and Northern Europe, places including Britain, France, Germany, and Sweden via a reformed NATO, a NATO which free riding on Americans are no longer possible. And China controls Central and Southern Europe, places like former Yugoslavia, Greece, Spain, and Italy via its Belt and Road initiatives. And Russia will have the Eastern Europe, its former Soviet sphere of influence, reviving the Warsaw Pact and its historical status as a great Russian empire. On the economic front, EU has traditionally been putting tariffs on American goods and blocking their market entry for so long. American-made cars, the big American muscles, and McDonald's, the big American Macs, are blocked from entering some of the EU markets. Dismantling the EU would open a 600 million people's market for the USA, slashing the US trade deficit and solving the pressing issue once and for all. And China would also dominate the uncompetitive European industries such as EVs, infrastructures, and energies, redirecting its business activities upon the European soil. And the collapse of the Eurozone will boost the RMB's role on the global stage, helping the internationalization of the RMB. And Russia will get a vast buffer zone, resolving its security stress, reindustrialize itself with oil-rich allies, using the Eastern Europe as a bridge for further trade and commerce. And more importantly, this ultimate solution is not an imperialistic scramble crushing on the European shoulders. It actually helps patriotic Europeans in their own nation-states who have been misled by the EU. We have already seen the commonsensical people in Europe awakening, led by France's Marine Le Pen, Germany's AfD, and Italy's Meloni. the EU has been undermining sovereignty of the nation-states with its Schengen zone policies, which allow illegal immigrants to travel freely across borders. Illegals from shithole places like Syria and Africa. Alongside NATO, the EU also provokes conflict in places like Ukraine in order to push the regime change in Russia, which is totally illegal. And the Sino-EU investment treaty, which could have given Europeans vast access to the China's EV supply chain, is also undermined by the EU's association with the so-called human rights activists and their false narrative on the genocide in China's Xinjiang province, which is a complete BS. In reality, the EU always had double standard. It condemns the corruption and democratic backsliding in Serbia and Hungary, while allowing such actions to happen in Romania and France. And that's only because Serbia and Hungary are governed by the commonsensical leaders like Viktor Orban, who is reverting to the traditional conservative European values. The EU also subverts Brexit by injecting 5 globalist prime ministers upon the British people, which totally compromised the mandate of the Brexit. Dismantling the EU is actually not only beneficial to the great people of USA, China, and Russia, but also helpful for the sovereign European nations to reclaim their own destiny. They can pursue their own interests and having their own reforms, both of which are necessary to revive this aging place, the aging Europe, both economically and culturally. They have to know this. The Chinese people have always wanted a strong and united Europe in a multipolar world, and we do support the strategic autonomy of the Europeans. But the EU has been totally infiltrated by the globalists, that today it is beyond redemption. The trade war launched by President Trump should also be a great strategic opportunity for the patriotic people in Europe to tear down this globalist tyranny forced upon them. They will realize the genuine popular sovereignty in this great place and help pushing the humanity toward the next stage of enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution.